point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD.
Coronavirus origins probe shut down. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. By the Biden administration, only weeks after the president took office.
The president believes there needs to be an independent investigation, one that's run by the international community.
Even as the Biden administration continues its call for a fuller WHO-led investigation into the origins of COVID-19, new reports have surfaced that Biden's team shut down a closely held State Department effort launched late in the Trump administration to prove the virus originated in a Chinese lab. The existence of the State Department inquiry and its termination this spring by the Biden administration comes to light amid growing questions about whether the virus leaked out of a Wuhan lab with links to the Chinese military.
Fox's Kevin Cork. Fox News medical contributor Dr. Marty Makary of Johns Hopkins University says there is no other viable explanation for the virus other than a lab leak.
What we have now is enough circumstantial evidence that the lab leak hypothesis is no longer a hypothesis. It is the default conclusion.
Dr. Makary charges many dismissed the lab leak theory early on for political reasons. A Senate vote is expected in the next few days on legislation to impanel a special congressional investigation to look into the January 6th riot at the Capitol. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
A Democratic-led Congress is not going to just sweep January 6th under the rug.
Senate Republicans oppose the bill. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying of the Democrats,
they would like to continue to debate things that occurred in the past. They'd like to continue to litigate the former president.
Toward that end, the joint investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney and the New York Attorney General's office has seated a special grand jury as part of a criminal investigation into the Trump Organization. Former President Trump on his website calls it purely political. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with a remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
One person is confirmed dead, 3 others missing in the crash of a firefighting helicopter in Leesburg, Florida, which went into a tailspin during a training flight.
The tail separated from the main body of the aircraft. The tail went onto the airport runway area, and the main body of the aircraft went back into that swampy, wooded area.
Captain Joe I. Ozzie of the Leesburg Police Department says they're still looking for the other 3 people who were on board. South Carolina's Bible study killer is trying to avoid the federal death penalty.
Attorneys for convicted killer Dylan Roof told an appellate court he shouldn't have been allowed to represent himself during a critical phase of his trial because he was under the delusional belief he'd be saved by white nationalists. The lawyers claim that should have been enough to show Roof wasn't competent. They want his death sentence vacated and for him to go through a competency evaluation. But Roof has undergone 2 competency hearings already. He's the first person in the U.S. sentenced to death for a federal hate crime after being convicted of killing 9 people at a black church in Charleston. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Consumer confidence dropped slightly in May, but remains almost as high as it's been since the pandemic began. The Conference Board says consumers' expectations for the future may be dimming because the effect of Americans spending their stimulus checks may be fading. One of Japan's major newspapers calling for the Tokyo Olympic Games to be canceled. Public opinion polls in Japan show between 60 to 80% of the people there don't want the games to be held because of the fear of the pandemic. Organizers and the International Olympic Committee say the games can be held safely. With 15,000 Olympic and Paralympic athletes entering Japan, plus tens of thousands of additional judges, officials, sponsors, broadcasters, and the media. The U.S. has advised Americans against traveling to the games. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Second Amendment, United States Constitution. I got a little Second Amendment news here today. We're going to get a new director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Now, you know, if you're talking about a director of agriculture, it's probably somebody who knows about farming and cows and things like that, and kind of likes cows and farming and things like that, so on, and so on across the board, except for alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, because the nominee, a gentleman by the name of David Shipman, notice it starts with a CH, Shipman, David Shipman apparently hates firearms. I suppose that's why Biden picked him to be director of the ATF. Well, and this comes from the Bearing Arms column. Well, President Joe Biden claimed he wanted to create unity. The fact that there is a David Chipman confirmation hearing suggests otherwise. Chipman, a former ATF agent and advisor to anti-gun groups, has made his opinions about the Second Amendment and gun owners very clear. Yet he's who Biden tapped to lead the agency most likely to cause problems for gun owners. And I suppose that's why Joe picked him. Those Republicans, as Barack Obama said, that's why they cling to their guns and Bibles, right? With that confirmation coming up this week, don't expect there to be a whole lot of other news at the national level. Even in rough and tumble 21st century Washington politics, the confirmation process for the director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives can be brutal. One former ATF agent once likened it to walking into a buzzsaw. Now, that same former agent, David Chipman, is President Biden's nominee to lead the ATF. Chipman's nomination has garnered strong support from gun control advocates and has drawn fierce opposition from gun rights groups. That's set the stage for what likely will be a tough confirmation fight in an evenly divided Senate as the Biden administration seeks to combat what the president has called an epidemic of gun violence. The fight will kick off in earnest starting Wednesday when Chipman is slated to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Since then, he's become an outspoken advocate for gun violence prevention. He has advocated tougher gun laws, including limits on high-capacity magazines and an assault-style weapons ban. He currently works as a senior policy advisor at Giffords, the gun violence prevention group led by former Arizona Rep. Gabby Giffords, who was wounded in a mass shooting in 2011. Chipman's policy positions and advocacy have won him plaudits and support from gun control advocates, but they also fueled intense pushback from gun rights groups, etc. The problem with someone like Chipman is that you can't trust him to look at the law and follow that. He's made a career out of being anti-gun and anti-gun owner. We don't like him, not because of any reason other than we simply can't trust him. It's because of this that you can expect these confirmation hearings to drive the Second Amendment news for next week. It's also yet another reason why the filibuster matters, since his confirmation can be filibustered if needed. However, Chipman's anti-gun history may be too much for some like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, which means Democrats may not have the votes for even a tie. Since a tie is their best-case scenario, when the vice president is a tiebreaker, there's still a chance that the Chipman's nomination won't be confirmed as permanent director. Well, I suppose I'll be talking about Chipman a lot during the next few days, and I've really got to be careful about my diction when I'm talking about this anti-gun man named Chipman.
You don't want the chip to hit the fan.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just try to say his name correctly and let the chips fall where they may. All right, let's go on to Demi Cotney. And it may be that the Daily News is starting to get its sea legs back. Here's today's editorial: privatize GMH for stability. You know, you could almost stop there and get a blue star. The Guam Memorial Hospital's efforts towards financial stability is a great goal. It's been a goal for the last 30 years. The plan for this time around is a focus on collection efforts, especially around insurance claims. A plan to assist patients with no insurance, claims totaling up to $25 million, seeking out grants and hoping to repair itself enough to regain accreditation and not lose Medicaid and Medicare funding. This administration has progressed probably further than administrations before. Talk about damning somebody with faint praise. But no matter how the government tries to right-size the hospital's finances, it will always run into a wall. The wall is the government itself. The government's regulations and policies make it impossible for the hospital to respond quickly to market forces. Fees must go through hearings to be approved. Salary changes must be approved by the legislature. Board members change every administration and don't even particularly have to have experience in any field. They're political appointments. The administrator changes with each administration several times over if experience has anything to do with it. This is not an efficient way to operate. The running of a hospital is not an easy task. It's in today's economy, a hospital is, for all intents and purposes, a business, even those hospitals that are founded and somewhat supported by trusts. Why don't we try something different to stabilize hospital operations, mostly especially finances? Why don't we try privatizing the hospital? Again, a solution that's been bandied about for the last 30 years. But the difference is it's a solution that hasn't been tried. It's tough to let go of sacred cows, especially one that employs hundreds of government employees. Privatizing an agency is not new for GovGuam. When the federal government began to deregulate telephone companies, the government of Guam recognized that it could not survive in a deregulated market. The telephone authority became the private entity known as GTA today. The island survived that change. GTA survived the change, and from what I understand, the employees on board at the time of the changeover were okay with it. It's obvious that the hospital will just continue to siphon millions of dollars off the taxpayers' backs in its inefficient operations unless it begins to behave and compete like a private business, an impossible feat when run by the government. The government's best efforts at stabilizing Guam Memorial Hospital is to privatize the hospital. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Guam Daily Post, the Daily News set the bar pretty high today. Let's see, I've got somebody coming in. Jose, should I take this call or go on to the Post? Okay, incoming call. This would have been a good time to take a call, but I'll go on to the Post. And I think the Post tried pretty hard today, and this is what the Post has to say today. With the Supreme Court decision, it's time for the U.S. to pay up for ORDOT dump closure. Well, you know, when you win on an appeal on a motion to dismiss, that doesn't mean it's time for the overweight female to begin warbling. Politically correct, right? Okay, it's no longer in dispute. That's the way they start. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision released Tuesday, cleared the herder for government of Guam's pursuit of a $160 million payment from the U.S. government in general, and the Navy in particular, to cover GovGuam's cost of closing the ORDOT dump and capping it in an environmentally sound manner. Well, to start with, you're wrong, Guam Daily Post. You're wrong on the facts. The suit is not about getting the U.S. government or the Navy to cover government of Guam's costs. Let's assume they're 160. They're about getting the Navy to contribute to the government of Guam's costs in amount equal to the damage that they caused, not the whole thing. So your first paragraph is wrong. And you say it's no longer in dispute. Well, what's no longer in dispute? This is starting out to be very misleading. What's no longer in dispute is that the government has a viable claim that was not barred by the statute of limitations. That's the only thing that's not in dispute now. Okay, then we got to go into the horribles here. GovGuam borrowed nearly $200 million for the cost of shutting down the ORDOT dump, installing among other things, a layering system, wastewater drain, and flare system for the methane gas that escapes the mountain of trash before capping off the facility. Now that the dump has been capped, there are continuing costs with maintenance. Part of the borrowed money also went towards paying the construction of the new landfill in Inalahan. Yeah, if I were to stumble...
You got to get that correct now.
If I were to stumble and say Inarahan, wow.
You might get the Chamorro, capital C, capital H, police after you.
Absolutely. The cost of cleaning up ORDOT was required under the federal court's watch and was necessary so the trash mountain in ORDOT doesn't continue to stink up neighborhoods and schools nearby. Wrong. That's not the reason. The reason was that leachate from the dump was leaching into the Lonfit River. That's the reason. Okay, they finally get to that. Causing decayed garbage to continue to flow in a nearby river that empties into the ocean and lead to fires that spark from time to time. It was a clean water violation, that's all, not a clean air. The Navy built the Orda dump in the 1940s and used it for decades before turning it over to Gov Guam. If they built it in the 1940s, I don't think they used it for decades. But what do I know? With that in mind, Gov Guam felt it was only right that the federal government should help pay the closure costs. Well, quibbling again, it's not how the government of Guam felt. That has nothing to do with it. It's what the law allowed. Instead of paying its share, the U.S. government fought in court to avoid payment by stating that the local government's window to file claim is gone, which is true. This is grievance politics in an editorial. I wonder if the person who wrote this editorial helped Tina with Resolution 56. That Navy bad, right? But the U.S. Supreme Court did not agree. In a May 24 decision penned by Justice Thomas Clarence. Did you know we had a Supreme Court justice named Clarence? That's what it says. In the May 24 decision penned by Justice Clarence, as you were Justice Thomas Clarence. You guys.
Trump snuck him in.
Yeah, yeah, right after Amy Coney Barrett. I'm sending another nomination to the Supreme Court, Thomas Clarence. He's a really good guy. If you like Clarence Thomas, you're really going to like Thomas Clarence.
He has two last names. Which one should we use?
So I wonder if anybody proofread this before it made the paper. In the May 24th decision penned by Justice Thomas Clarence on behalf of the justices who decided in Guam's favor unanimously, the High Court made it clear that the local government can sue the U.S. government's for the U.S. government's contribution toward the cost of resolving the environmental disaster that is the Orda dump. So it took them, 6 or 7 paragraphs before they got it right after getting it wrong in the first paragraph. Gov Guam, according to the Supreme Court, may seek contribution under CERCLA only after settling a CERCLA-specific liability as opposed to resolving environmental liability under some other law. Now, you threw that in there without knowing what it meant. So the way you put it in there, it means absolutely nothing. Good show. With regard to the cost of closing the dump and the construction of the new landfill, it was the Guam Environmental Protection Agency that sued Gov Guam to shut down the dump in violation of the Clean Water Act, based on the argument that toxins from the dump flowed into the Lonfit River and ultimately the ocean. They start out and get it wrong, and then later on they get it right. Greg C. Gare, counsel for Gov Guam, said at the Supreme Court hearing, the bottom line is that the U.S. wants to have its cake and eat it too. It sued Gov Guam under the Clean Water Act in order to insulate itself from liability for its own role at the Orda dump. I wonder if that's the case.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I don't think that the folks over at EPA were saying, here's how we get the Navy out from under this. Well, yeah. Allegations, as you were. It sued Gov Guam under the Clean Water Act in order to insulate itself from liability for its own role at the Orda dump. Allegations that must be accepted as true, and now it wants to block Guam's action to recover a portion of its cleanup costs by saying that the party's settlement, the Clean Water Act, claims somehow barred CERCLA Contribution Act. Somehow barred. Somehow, in such a difficult to ascertain matter that the Court of Appeals for the Ninth ruled that way 3 different times. Gov Guam's counsel argued that government should not be allowed to get away with that ploy here. It's always good to throw in a little demagoguery here. Gare couldn't have said it more effectively. No more legal mumbo-jumbo is necessary. Yeah. I guess you've expanded your market, Guam Daily Post, to the nickel seats and the peanut gallery. I guess you figured you were too highbrow for the nickel seats up until now, but now you're there. It can ask Congress to authorize funding to pay $160 million Guam is seeking. Guam is not seeking 100. Well, yeah, in the complaint it is. Yeah. The Navy in recent years has been drumming up its image as a good environmental steward, having shown it made some questionable decisions in prior decades. This is now an opportunity for the Navy to show its sincerity to do it right by Guam and the environment, not just tell. This means paying up and not dragging the issue further. You know, this is high-powered litigation in high-powered courts under the guidance of high-powered people for big stakes. This means paying up and not dragging the issue further. Works pretty well when you're talking about a poker bet down at the corner bar. It's not appropriate here at all. Poor editorial. There was a lot of potential in the subject that you picked, but you tried to Tina Rose Munya Barnes it. You wanted to use it as a vessel to beat up on the Navy, and the people who represented the Navy were doing their job and doing the job I want them to do. I don't want them to pay out money that they don't have to pay out. And if that means asserting an affirmative defense like statute of limitations, if they don't do it, I'm going to be angry. In the same way with our local attorney general. Okay, I've tried to find stuff other than what I just read. You know, and the thing like, well, now we got to make sure we put that money to good use. All of the you know, when is the victory parade? So I have an article here that came from a legal commentator, and I'm going to pull out what I think is relevant. We'll take a short break, and I'll come back to this.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit chilisguam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's, 3 for me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So I've got an analysis here that shows that Guam kind of is a hero here. I've told you before, this case is not about Guam. It's about technical statutes of limitation. I think there are like maybe 160 cases flopping around in the court system somewhere that will be influenced by this case. And we're kind of used to having a hangdog approach where, you know, we kind of come behind the states and everything. But it looks like here we actually struck a blow for states' rights. And here's what this commentator says. During oral arguments, several justices raised concerns about the implication for states' rights if the United States were to triumph in its argument. Some also took issue with the expectation that all jurisdictions have a full understanding of deeply complex legal agreements. Now, it sounds like we're back to the
Mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, we're back to the alien races and Anglos. You know, some of the states don't understand Anglo-Saxon laws, so they can't deal with things like CERCLA and the Clean Water Act, right?
How dare you?
Yeah. Joseph Diedrich, who represented the other jurisdictions supporting Guam in the case, said the ruling will be felt nationwide. More than 160 high-profile areas where the United States shares some responsibility could be affected. Most are former military sites. The case has implications far beyond just Guam's situation. Yeah, I told you so. The ruling ensures, Diedrich added, that the United States can't use its dual role as both regulator and responsible party to cleverly evade liability, which hurts parties like Guam that are dealing with shared responsibility at contaminated sites around the country. So in every one of the state capitals, I expect they're running the Guam flag up the flagpole for a brief interval and clapping, right? Hooray for Guam. Diedrich also pointed to the unanimous opinion as very unifying and an indicator that there doesn't need to be undue division when it comes to answering straightforward statutory questions. Well, I don't know how straightforward this one was, but I do like the idea that per my analysis, the case really wasn't about Guam. It was about an important legal question, and the way the case turned out, it was a victory for Guam and a victory for states' rights. Once again, impacting on my statement that we used to have a federal government, now we got a national government and 50 state administrative districts. Well, this case turns the dial back a little bit, and I'm glad of that. Okay. So weighing the two, the Daily News and the Post. Daily Post, you were full of errors. Your theory was wrong. Beating up on the Navy because you wanted to beat up on the Navy does not make good editorial policy. Therefore, Pacific Daily News. The Daily News got the coveted blue star today, and I've got a caller here that wants to make another mark, right? Good afternoon, another Mark.
Hey, Bob, how are you doing today?
Doing tip-top, Mark.
I got a question.
Sir.
Back in the 80s, I was stateside when I saw this, and I was reading up on it. Back in the 80s, they had what they called the Superfund Act, which identified prior military bases, the usage of the properties that were close to the bases that were marked for, like landfills and such, right?
Sure.
Okay, Guam was on that list as a military dump site. Okay? That included ORDOT. But I believe, if I remember the article right, and it wasn't done by a local newspaper, it was done by an international newspaper, that one of the reasons why Guam failed to act on it, like they should have acted on it in the late 80s and mid-90s, was because they didn't want to pay anything. They wanted it closed and capped for free. Okay? Now, they're running around, how it is, how people have a tendency of putting the cart before the horse.
Sure.
Now they're chasing the tail. Trying to catch a tail that they let loose way back when, and now can't seem to get a hold of it.
Yeah, well, they're really at the tail end of the horse, that's for sure, Mark.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, why is it now that people, there's some individuals out there in an uproar about something that could have been taken care of by the government with the federal's help in the 80s when we were flush with cash? So whoever's coming up with this, the Navy's bad, Navy does this, that, the federal government should pay. They had their chance and blew it.
Good point, Mark.
So now they're trying to get the Navy to pay for something. You know?
Yeah.
And to share how old I am, I remember driving down into the ordered landfill to dump trash.
Boy, when it was a hole in the ground instead of Mount Trashmore, that's a long time ago, Mark.
Exactly. And at the same time, I also remember going to a landfill in Anderson as well as a landfill in Navy that they were utilizing. Same thing. They dug a hole to get the materials to build the runways and such. They turned around and said, well, what better way to fill the hole than with trash? You know, and back then, back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, they had no Clean Water Act or anything like that. They figured there's a hole in the ground, let's fill it up.
Sure.
So with this Clean Air Act or Clean Water Act, which is a federal mandate or federal law, okay, you have to ensure that none of the leachate gets out. And then you have to also plumb in a system to get some methane gas releases for the Clean Air Act. Now, had Guam done all this when it was supposed to do it, in my opinion, we would be one of the very few places that would have an active methane retrieval for clean energy, just like some of the states now.
Sure.
Where they recover the methane gas from the deteriorating trash and convert it to energy. But it seems like the politicians on Guam seem to like putting the cart in front of the horse because we like chasing the cart around the corner.
Kind of like the Supreme Court Justice Thomas Clarence.
Yeah, I heard that his twin brother was Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll be surprised if whoever wrote that was actually alive during the 70s.
Probably not.
Yeah, and I know you've been on Guam for a while.
A long time.
You know, so you might have caught the tail end of that. But at one time, the federal government was looking at closing landfills that were identified as Superfunds.
I know what you're talking about, and that's CERCLA. That's a statute that's implicated here, and I do remember as that unfolded. But I'll give you the short answer here, another Mark, and that's this: there are no good politics in dumps. You know, building an airport, building a school, the ribbon cutting. What a wonderful senator that guy was. What a great bill. But when it comes to prisons and dumps, there's no good politics. So if there's any way to get out from doing it, your standard election-driven politician is not going to get involved. So it's unfortunate.
No, and here's another thing. Okay, to your first subject about the hospital.
Sure.
Okay, apparently Guam needs to do some research on state-run hospitals in the states. I think majority of them have been shut down, mainly because they're not making any money. Guam has to be zero profit if they're going to run a hospital, but they can't. Because for one thing, the funding coming in from patient payments is not reliable. You know, so they can't make the money to build the hospital and maintain the hospital in such a manner that it will be a good place for locals to go to, because they have to keep their costs down. But then again, when it comes to hiring, You get rid of the hiring, majority of the dead hires that they have over there, the duplicated positions, and you're going to save a good 25 to 30%, I'd say, on the funding from GovWa.
Sure.
But just like GTA, the government has no business running entities without the knowledge. And even if they do have the knowledge, they have to make a profit in order to be able to maintain the function of that entity. I mean, GPA, GWA, same. All right? If you were looking at the water that the amount of money that we pay the Navy, the process, they're going to process the water, and the only thing GWA is doing is running it through the pipes. Okay? You're going to find out that majority of the money we pay, the locals that use the water, you look at the surcharges and all that good stuff, we are paying almost double what the Navy's charging us per gallon or per 1,000 gallons. Okay, and GWA is not doing anything but distributing it. They're not filtering it. They're not cleaning nothing. They're distributing it, but yet we're paying almost twice the amount that the Navy's charging us or charging the authority. Should GPA or the Navy and or the military, say, decide to open back up the power plants, I'll guarantee you it's going to be the same thing. They're going to give it to the authority, and the authority is going to put all their surcharges on it. And next thing you know, we're paying more for that power that's being made cheaply.
Interesting points, Mark. You made your mark today. I really appreciate your calling in. I got to get over and see what Art James has got to say this afternoon. Good afternoon, Art James.
Doing fine, Bob. Okay, so let's make sure that we're all on the same playing field here. So the EPA has mandated that all of these sites, according to quote-unquote federal law, have to be cleaned up. And it's been determined, and I'm sure proven beyond the shadow of a doubt, that most of these dump sites and most of the material is from previous military dumpings, use, etc. I remember when I was a kid, in the 60s and the 70s during Vietnam, they were disposing of a lot of stuff in a lot of different places. I mean, we found everything from old ordnance to mustard gas to, you name it, all over the island. Okay. Instead of having all of the politicians be very politician-like and get over a table and start arguing with each other, wouldn't it make, and I'm not even going to say common sense, I'm just going to say, wouldn't it make sense, period, that if it's identified to be military dumping or military disposal in a certain area, that even if it was legal at that time, what difference does it make if there's a deadline to file on something? There shouldn't even be a deadline to file on something, because we found things all over our island that may not have even been marked. It may not really have even been recorded very much, and if it was, it might not be real accurate as to where the location was, or how deep it was disposed of, or what was even in that disposal site.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that, James. But what we're talking about here is the ORDOT dump, not dumping around the island in general. And I suspect that other than murder, you're going to have a hard time finding any statutory scheme that doesn't have a statute of limitations attached, and there are good policy reasons for that. But this case, the one that we're talking about here, is about the Navy's paying for what amounts to their trash in the ORDOT dump against what it costs the government of Guam. So I think the statute of limitations here is beneficial. I pointed out yesterday that somebody in the Attorney General's office flubbed back in 2004 when we entered into that settlement agreement on the clean water claim and didn't sue for contribution then. So, you know, we kind of were asleep at the switch and have made a healthful recovery now because we now will have the opportunity to prove how much of the stuff in the dump is the Navy's and get some money out of it.
Yeah, if we were asleep at the wheel and or signed away our rights to be able to, you know, claim help in some degree, if not 100%, for cleaning it up, then yeah, shame on us. And of course, that wouldn't be the first time that we fell asleep at the wheel and ran off the road. But yeah, I mean, if it can be proven that there's a percentage that belongs to previous military, you know, disposal, yeah, okay. I mean, sure, they're politicians. That's what they like to do is make laws and deadlines. But if a site is uncovered and it's shown to be a percentage that's previous military, then I think that the military should bear their part of the responsibility.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what the doctrine of contribution provides. That's exactly where we are.
Yep. So, and then one other quick question, and this relates to face mask and quarantine deal. What's your take on the governor legally as far as the rights of all U.S. citizens to travel freely? What's your take on the governor being able to quarantine people, especially now at this particular time? I mean, like within everything that's unfolded over the last 2 weeks. What's your take on her legally being able to quarantine people traveling from a U.S. destination to a U.S. destination, quote unquote, within the United States?
Well, I think that question's been pretty thoroughly litigated, and it all goes back to a 1905 case called Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which, if we wait long enough, Tina will introduce a resolution to have overruled. Yeah, given our local statutes and the courts are still really enthralled with Jacobson versus Massachusetts, I suspect that a case it'd be a little difficult to have the ability to sue, because if you can't, well, no, I guess not. I guess if you got into the island and you're in quarantine, you'd have standing. But I suspect that you probably would not prevail. Another James.
Even as a citizen, not as a foreign national trying to travel, quote unquote, international.
Well, you know, the Constitution doesn't protect citizens except in a few very limited cases. It protects persons. So anyone who had the right to travel to Guam would be in the same situation as a citizen.
Okay. All right, Bob. Appreciate it. Have a great one.
Good talking to you, James. All right, let's take a short break here.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tucumán has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tucumán. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 10 minutes here before that big halftime show.
Bob, just real quick,
Sure.
in addition to James talking about the percentage of responsibility, remember that phone call you had earlier when you were reading the first editorial?
Yeah.
That was actually a anonymous informant. They
Then
just
it's really, really important.
It's really important.
Thank goodness he didn't give us his name.
Well, his name was anonymous. Last name informant.
All right.
Or it could be informant anonymous. But
if he wants to be on the Supreme Court someday, yeah.
But he said that he got some good news and bad news from Joint Region Marianas. They kept meticulous records of what they dumped in ORDOT. The Navy did. The bad news is they stored them down at DeWitt.
Yeah, sense of humor like that, the guy ought to be identifying himself on Tall Tales, right?
He left that up to me.
Very good. Okay, good points. All right, let's move on to the card then. And we start out with Tall Tales versus Tina's Myth. And then we've got, once again, we've got Amata Coleman Radawagon versus Tina tomorrow at 4:30. The delegate from American Samoa to the U.S. Congress, Amata Radawagan, will be calling us from D.C. tomorrow at 4:30, and she's going to tell us what her position is on the repeal of the insular cases. And I don't know, she is an elected official, so she may not be able to be quite as assertive as I am with respect to Tina and her misguided attempts at fame. Let's see. I got the right card here. I got Jim Moylan versus law school. Let me just take a look here. Maybe I do have the wrong card, Jose. Yeah, Guam versus Taliban, Ignacio versus Jerry Kitchen, Gabbard versus Lightfoot, etc. So let's start out with Tina's Myth. And once again, reminding you of Robert Lynn's famous quotation, it's easier to believe a lie you've heard 1,000 times than the fact that you just heard once. And that's where we are with the racist insular cases. And I have dissected and autopsied Downs versus Bidwell, which is the only one they're actually talking about. And I think most of them in the legislature don't even know the name Downs versus Bidwell. They just, throw out the insular cases and, well, you know what they mean. So that quote that Ann Parasatori took nationally, if the islands are inhabited by alien races, etc. And that, of course, is the indication that Ann and Tina and so many other folks think, well, that case is racist, and that's the reason that it reached the result that it did. And I got to tell you, that's not correct. That's just wrong, and distrust anybody who tells you that. If you were to read Downs versus Bidwell, you'd find out it's a commercial case. It's about tariffs. It's about shipping bananas from Puerto Rico to the port of New York. Downs was an importer. Bidwell was the collector of customs for New York. And the ruling in Downs was that the revenue clauses of the Constitution do not apply to the islands conquered in the Spanish-American War. Easy way to put it, the Constitution does not ex proprio vigere follow the flag. So all of the provisions of the U.S. Constitution did not apply in the three islands that the United States asserted sovereignty over after the Treaty of Paris in 1898. And that's the reason that territories are not treated the same as the states. Now, in the beginning, you're going to say, whoa, that's bad. That's really bad. However, the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover unless you're Tina. right? Tina looked at the cover and she saw the word racist on the cover. She said, I don't need to read this book. I know everything I need to know about this book, even though the word racist followed the word not.
Nope.
She saw the word racist there. So insular cases are not racist. They're not about alien races. They're not about voting or citizenship. They're about tariffs. And the revenue clause of the Constitution does not apply, or the uniformity clause of the Constitution does not apply in Guam. We'll just stick to Guam here for a moment. And because of that, we don't pay federal income tax. Because the fact that the uniformity clause does not apply here, Congress enacted a law that said the income tax laws of the United States mirror image apply here. So that what you pay, it looks like federal income tax, stays right here on the island for our local government to squander. And because the uniformity clause doesn't apply here, we get Section 30 money. And because the uniformity clause doesn't apply here, customs laws of the United States don't apply here. Guam is a free port. You don't have to pay duty to bring imports into Guam. And we don't have U.S. Customs and Border Protection folks at the airport collecting customs. We have our own customs folks. And because the uniformity clause doesn't apply here, we can give GITA tax rebates to people, to industries that we want to encourage here. So we've really got a pretty nice setup as far as economics are concerned. And it's because of Downs versus Bidwell. Now, there are those who would say, well, it's racist. I don't care. It's got to be overturned, just like Plessy versus Ferguson had to be overturned before the civil rights movement could start. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true at all. If you read the history at the time of Brown versus Board of Education, you would see that there are a lot of commentators that said you really didn't need Brown, that that's the way the country was heading anyhow. And as a general principle, a legislative or popular resolution to a problem is far superior to a judicial solution to a problem. It's called the D word, democracy. When you have unelected people in black robes called judges running your government, it's called critarchy, and it's not a good way to run a government. But those who are so caught up in the racist thing, Tina and her gang, are saying we've got to ask that Downs be overruled because it's racist, and all of these horrible things would befall us. Now, these same people are talking about, self-determination is really important for Guam. We got to have the ability to determine our own fate. Well, as soon as Downs is overruled, that's gone. Because if Downs were overruled, it would be because the Supreme Court said, we made a mistake in 1901. The Constitution does, of its own force, ex proprio vigere, follow the flag. Therefore, the Constitution completely applies to Guam. Guam is an incorporated territory. And there's only one way you can go from an incorporated territory. It's statehood. That's it. If Guam is an unincorporated territory, then Article 4, Section 3, Paragraph 2 of the U.S. Constitution said that the Congress can make needful rules to dispose of the territory of the United States. So if Congress so desired, they could set Guam free. Guam could be independent. We could then go from Governor Leon Guerrero to His Majesty Michael Bavacqua, the King of Guam, or whatever idea for government they have in mind, because we don't know what it is that they have in mind. But that's all gone if Downs is overruled. Lots of people have tried to tell Tina and the gang that, but they can't get past the R word. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and I'll come back to Tall Tales and Tina.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Coronavirus origins probe shut down. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. By the Biden administration, only weeks after the president took office.
The president believes there needs to be an independent investigation, one that's run by the international community.
Even as the Biden administration continues its call for a fuller WHO-led investigation into the origins of COVID-19, new reports have surfaced that Biden's team shut down a closely held State Department effort launched late in the Trump administration to prove the virus originated in a Chinese lab. The existence of the State Department inquiry and its termination this spring by the Biden administration comes to light amid growing questions about whether the virus leaked out of a Wuhan lab with links to the Chinese military.
Fox's Kevin Corke. Fox News medical contributor Dr. Marty Makary of Johns Hopkins University says there is no other viable explanation for the virus other than a lab leak.
What we have now is enough circumstantial evidence that the lab leak hypothesis is no longer a hypothesis. It is the default conclusion.
Dr. Makary charges many dismissed the lab leak theory early on for political reasons. A Senate vote is expected in the next few days on legislation to impanel a special congressional investigation to look into the January 6th riot at the Capitol. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Democratic-led Congress is not going to just sweep January 6th under the rug.
Senate Republicans oppose the bill. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying of the Democrats,
they would like to continue to debate things that occurred in the past. They'd like to continue to litigate the former president.
Toward that end, the joint investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney and the New York Attorney General's office has seated a special grand jury as part of a criminal investigation into the Trump Organization. Former President Trump on his website calls it purely political. America is listening to Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
One person is confirmed dead, 3 others missing in the crash of a firefighting helicopter in Leesburg, Florida, which went into a tailspin during a training flight.
The tail separated from the main body of the aircraft. The tail went onto the airport runway area, and the main body of the aircraft went back into that swampy, wooded area.
Captain Joe I. Ozzie of the Leesburg Police Department says they're still looking for the other 3 people who were on board. South Carolina's Bible study killer is trying to avoid the federal death penalty.
Attorneys for convicted killer Dylan Roof told an appellate court he shouldn't have been allowed to represent himself during a critical phase of his trial because he was under the delusional belief he'd be saved by white nationalists. The lawyers claim that should have been enough to show Roof wasn't competent. They want his death sentence vacated and for him to go through a competency evaluation. But Roof has undergone 2 competency hearings already. He's the first person in the U.S. sentenced to death for a federal hate crime after being convicted of killing 9 people at a black church in Charleston. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Consumer confidence dropped slightly in May, but remains almost as high as it's been since the pandemic began. The Conference Board says consumers' expectations for the future may be dimming because the effect of Americans spending their stimulus checks may be fading. One of Japan's major newspapers calling for the Tokyo Olympic Games to be canceled. Public opinion polls in Japan show between 60 to 80% of the people there don't want the games to be held because of the fear of the pandemic. Organizers and the International Olympic Committee say the games can be held safely, with 15,000 Olympic and Paralympic athletes entering Japan, plus tens of thousands of additional judges, officials, sponsors, broadcasters, and the media. The U.S. has advised Americans against traveling to the games. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community, yet national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
So here we are at the end of another beautiful halftime show here on Tall Tales. It means we're in the second half of Tall Tales. It means we're in the second half of this week. Wow, we've had half the fun we're going to have this week already, Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say.
Yeah. Well, how about, you're right, Bob. That's always a good default.
That goes without saying, though, Bob.
But it's always a good default answer.
True. You're right, Bob.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I notice on my stack I've got another Joe who wants to dump on the dump. Hadn't we moved off that item on the card? Weren't we on the beat up on Tina part of the card?
I'm just laughing because you said dump on dump and then moved.
Yeah. Yeah. But am I not correct that we're now on the beat up on Tina? Haven't we actually ended the bout where we were dumping on the dump?
We can dump on another on Tina.
So as a general proposition, when people call, isn't it better if they call during the time we're discussing something, or perhaps right at the end of it?
You're right, Bob.
Because I don't like to start a topic, start about, stop, deviate, and then come back. It's not really good talk radio, right, Jose?
You're right, Bob.
Yeah. So who have I got on the line here? Another Joe? Yeah. Hi, Another Joe.
Actually, Bob, it's kind of connected because they're kind of critical of these the 36th legislature. Like you're saying, they're taking such a long time to pay for their the mess that they left or they're dumping, and you're bringing up that actually they have to prove that the Navy's used the dump, and that would be I think Tina bringing that up. Anyway.
Well, at least it's not about compact impact.
Don't tell me.
Go ahead, Another Joe. Go ahead before I change my mind and hang up.
Okay. No. So, Rob, the interesting thing was that resolution. They were at the beginning of today. They were bringing Resolution 56, and quite a few of them were figuring out whether they were going to stay signed on or not, and it was very different from when they first observed it. So I think Senator Frank Blas wasn't sure, and Senator Chris Duenas wasn't sure. Then, but then you would see like Eric Torres seemed to be more convinced to be supportive of it. You're like, wow, something's going on here. Something different for sure. The interesting thing I found was that the speaker actually said, well, there could be a solution through Congress instead of the judiciary, the courts, and but she was saying that she didn't completely agree or disagree with any of the senators, and she was bringing up certain points. I think perhaps if you had time, Bob, take a look at that the video of today's whatever it was in session, and take a look at what all these senators were saying, especially the speaker. And I think it was interesting. The speaker, hinted at possibly the Bureau. I think it was the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
What?
Which would be like an act of Congress.
I missed. I can't figure out what you're trying to say. Try again, Another Joe.
It was there are a lot of issues and subjects brought up regarding this Resolution 56, and I think maybe if you have some time, take a look at it. After today's program, and maybe do some analysis of what they're getting at, because they're saying that this resolution has been changed, Resolution 56, and it needs to be brought up, and they need more work on it. I think was
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they moved it to the third reading, so there's not going to be any more work on it unless somebody has 8 votes to bring it back from third reading and send it back to committee, and I don't think that's going to happen because everyone is afraid of the big R. I saw Therese Terlahi. Therese Terlahi obviously understands what's involved, but it's like I said the other day, trying to defend Downs versus Bidwell is like trying to defend incest or bank robbery or something like that. So she tiptoed around it so lightly that I'm afraid that in a place where everybody else is shouting and you're whispering, even if you're right and they're wrong, they're not going to pay much attention to you.
Okay, well, I give it my shot, and I think they're definitely going to be bringing up. I don't think they're going to quit with this resolution. Well, some of them are going to be upset about it. Obviously, there's going to be more brought up about the race. Was it race politics or?
Yeah, well, it's so much easier, and it's so much more fun. And for certain parts of the population, it's so much more persuasive. And we have a small group of very very vociferous people here on the island, the separatists. The non-separatists just kind of go on about their lives and don't make a lot of noise, but the separatists make a lot of noise. So there aren't very many of them, but an awful lot of people just don't want to have them be on the wrong side of the separatists. So they'll sit quietly by and let this racist BS go on rather than challenge and concentrate on good government. So that's where we are, Another Joe. But anyhow, tomorrow if I talk about the dump, you can call back and dump on the dump, okay?
Okay, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob.
All right. So I've got a caller on the line here who has occasionally been wrongfully accused of undue repetition. What's his name, Jose?
Say that again? That would be Pete.
Good afternoon, Pete.
Good afternoon, Uncle Bob. You know, your phones were down yesterday. I was just tickled at your musings. I don't know if that's the right terminology with the, how do I say this politically correct, the idiocracy of James Moylan's bills.
Uh-huh.
You know, I dubbed him the bad idea fairy, but something else came to mind, and I was calling in yesterday to put it out there, but the phones were down.
Yeah.
Do you remember that comic strip, There Ought to Be a Law?
Oh, yeah. Way back.
Doesn't he remind you of that?
He does, yeah. Every personal problem, right, could be the subject of legislation that would make things right. Yeah, protecting yourself from yourself.
And there was a time in history when the ordinances and statutes just got so overwhelming because they were doing exactly what he likes to do, is just like invent a new law every week.
Yeah.
Even though they're 1/6 the bake, the fraction's getting smaller and smaller the more crappy bills he puts out.
True enough. Well, he kind of set a new record yesterday and especially in his release, where he testifies against his own bill by saying the legislature should never meet behind closed doors.
Yeah, they don't cheat like us, Uncle Bob. They don't read.
No, it's too much trouble. Yeah, if you can't find a video that will teach you what you need to know, forget it. And our bills are all printed.
Which now just made me think about, there's a new fad of these companies that are condensing cliff notes for books, and they claim that if you subscribe to their program and read all their or listen to all their 15-minute cliff notes of all the great books that are out there, you're going to become this super intelligent person, which that's artificial intelligence at its best.
Yeah. Somebody who did that
it's the dumbing down of America.
Yeah. You know, if someone who signed up for those videos could then maybe be the host of Tall Tales, Pete.
You would hope not.
And you know, if this new technique, I wish they'd had this new technique. Gilbert had that new technique back when we went to law school, right?
Right. I All right, Uncle Bob. Thanks for the ride.
Good talking to you, Repeat. All right, so where were we? We're beating up on Tina, right? Yeah. So I did watch some of the testimony, some of the hearing this morning. I think you did too, right?
Yeah, I was trying to follow along, and sometimes I just needed to turn it off for a little while because it was awful.
Well, I will say this, that Tello appeared to have gotten it. Tello said, you know, we're talking here about SSI and Medicaid, et cetera, and those are good things. We should write to Congress. We should get after Congress. We should tell Congress to give us those things. But we shouldn't put everything in this one resolution. And she's right, because they're two totally different subjects. And it's kind of like this Daily News editorial today where, you know, when you flub up on some what are actually collateral matters, it detracts your from your credibility on the really important points of what you're trying to say. When you quote United States Supreme Court Justice Thomas Clarence, your reputation as a legal interpreter goes way down really fast.
I just didn't understand why not a single senator said, just scrap this entire resolution. Speaker Terlahi almost did that because the only part of it she agreed with was the amendment that was offered this morning.
Yeah.
And that's let's go to Congress and ask them to change this, which is what they should be doing in the first place.
Exactly. And as I've pointed out so many times, 1421A of the Organic Act, Guam is declared to be an unincorporated territory of the United States. Strike the word, the UN, and the insular cases disappear, as does our mirror image taxation and all the other bennies we got.
I dare them.
I dare you to do that. Yeah, so she was, but, you know, once again, it's this kind of thing that, well, if I came out and said, send it back to committee, well, you favor racism? You're backing somebody that called Chamorro savages? Come on. You know, that's where we are. And this is not intelligent legislative work. You know, you get better work out of the Bridge Club than you get out of this kind of a performance. It's really sad. So, yeah, I thought Tello had a pretty good handle on it. Mary Torres, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I recognize some of the stuff that Mary Torres was saying as coming out of Neil Weir's boilerplate. And then, of course, Neil Weir, you know, when you're examining these things, the old cui bono comes in. So if the insular case it were overruled, who would benefit? Neil Weir, because Neil Weir has that case pending in the 10th Circuit about birthright citizenship from people born in American Samoa that the Samoans hate. But if the insular, if Downs were reversed, then everybody born in Samoa would be a birthright citizen. And then there's the case coming to the Supreme Court. I can't remember the name of it. It's coming out of Puerto Rico, where a gentleman was living in Puerto Rico drawing living in New York drawing SSI. He moved back to Puerto Rico and continued getting his SSI. I suppose someone was forwarding the envelope to him in Puerto Rico. And the Social Security Administration found out, and they're suing for the recovery of the money. And his defense is, overrule the insular cases so I can keep the money. So there's strong lobby elements here, maybe not here, but in Puerto Rico and other places that would like to see the insular cases overturned. Be a horrible thing for the 5 territories. Absolutely horrible.
But it's based on faulty reasons, and that's what's confounding me right now is how wanting to be this beacon of virtue by denouncing racism has blinded them to like simple logic.
Absolutely, and that is one of the dangers in the R word, in racism. Yeah. Clint Eastwood, had to take it upon himself.
Senator Clint Rizal?
Yeah, Clint Eastwood. Senator Clint Rizal, had to go in there and pick apart the part of the Navy's summary on what I thought at the very, very most were picayune matters,
And he was an error in a lot of his opining on some of those merits.
Yeah.
And if you want, there's 2 instances where I can speak on definitively.
Go right ahead.
Well, he talked about how the Navy said that that Guam was the navel of the world for the Marianas.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some of the stories and teachings from schools of navigation in Micronesia, and I'm not talking as an expert, but from what was told to me through some of the navigators that I've met, because I used to be a student, or I still am a student of navigation, Guam was a place where they went to as a premier school of navigation as well. So they weren't misrepresenting Guam in saying that. I know you mentioned Rapa Nui, but I don't know anything about Rapa Nui except for they like to wear their fallacies on their heads or phallacies on their heads. But
yeah,
it's a different story.
Most of them had the same first name, Richard.
Right, they all, it's true.
Yeah, well, Clint said the name, if you translated Rapa Nui into English, it would be Navel of the World. Now, somehow this was important because I really want to brush up on my Rapa Nui.
The other thing he spoke of is that he mentioned something about Western science hasn't figured out these Micronesian canoes yet, and I'm not understanding what that had to do with what the Navy said. Number one, I know a lot of builders of canoes these days, modern builders of canoes, that are using Western science to do so.
Mhm.
One of them is our friend Mario Borja,
Right.
who built the Sackman using a isometric drawing, almost a blueprint that was written or drawn by a Western sailor.
Yeah.
The Anson drawing, and I'm not trying to denounce that his opinions aren't valid, but you can't state fact. You can't state opinion as fact,
No.
especially when it comes to seafaring, because there's a lot of differentiates between the islands, a lot of different things between the islands that you can't just generalize.
Yeah. So very poor performance on the part of Clint. A horrible F- on the part of Mary Torres. Tello gets a good strong B. Therese an A-. Had Therese been more forceful and done what she really should have done, she should have said, we need to send this back to committee.
I was amused that Senator Sabina Perez recognized that she had to follow Speaker Therese Terlai. And whatever you think about it, it might have stunted the rest of her testimony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't see any of the rest of the testimony. I think another Joe had a hard time understanding him today. I think he said that Moylan and Blas pulled their names off as co-sponsors.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well, that would be a smart move.
I heard Moylan was going to, but I didn't hear if Blas was, and it's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope for their sake that they did, because that'd be the last thing I would ever want to be connected with is that resolution, except as someone who vigorously opposed it.
But again, there were no objections.
No.
And it went unanimously, no objection.
Well, I don't know if Tina is a master strategist or she just stumbled into it, but by throwing all the racist anti-Navy stuff in there, she really immunized the the resolution from criticism, because the thought process would be, well, if you're not supporting the resolution, you're supporting racism. And that horrible Navy that just did so many bad things here on the island, right? So do we give Tina a medal for being a master strategist or for being really good at walking around with a blindfold on?
We do have a weak applause button here.
That's enough. That's enough. Okay. I'm going to leave the phones open. Anybody else that wants to come in and help me out with Tina, even if I have to interrupt another subject, except someone who's already been on the phone. Right? Yeah, okay, let's go to Chicago for the seventh inning stretch, and I'm going to come back to Guam versus the Taliban.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Something just happened.
We lost something. Yeah. Well, I can still hear myself. I can hear myself talk. But we lost our background music. Tall Tales. Well, here we are in Wrigley Field. We had a dead ball there for a minute, just a couple seconds ago, but seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I go from there to Vietnam. Yeah, goodbye Tall Tales, hello Vietnam. And the title of this part of the card is Guam versus Taliban, and I have a statement, as you were an article here, from dealing with Dr. Hoa Nguyen. And this is what he says. Prominent local doctor and former Vietnamese refugee Hoa Nguyen said Guam and the U.S. should welcome Afghan refugees with open arms. The good doctor said these people helped our American soldiers and deserve to be spared from any potential harm when troops leave the country. Nguyen was just 14 years old when his family was evacuated to Guam in 1975 as part of Operation New Life. The U.S. was withdrawing from his native Vietnam after a long war that saw communists gain control of the country. 46 years later, he sees the same thing happening with the planned U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I was tearing when I heard the news that they're possibly going to come here, he said. It'll bring back a lot of good memories. I would say that Guam should welcome them, Nguyen said. They help the U.S. a whole lot, and if they're left behind, more likely they'll be killed. I'm very, very sure of that. President Biden's plan is to withdraw all troops in a few months, leading to what many believe will be the rise of an oppressive Taliban regime. Dr. Nguyen believes thousands of Afghans who supported American military efforts are in peril. He said they deserve help, just like his family received. We had a new opportunity in life given to us from the U.S. and people on Guam, he said. I cannot be who I am now unless in 1975 we find that Guam did not open their arms to us. That's why this is part of the family here. Guam is my island. His family took full advantage of the opportunity when all of his siblings in the mainland are physicians serving communities. So somebody knocks on the door and says, is there a doctor in the house? A whole chorus of voices answer. For the people of Afghanistan, I'm very sure they're nice people, and lots of them will contribute a great deal to the United States if they're given the opportunity to start a new life for them. And this is the part I like. We are the greatest nation on earth, Gwen said, not because of one single individual or one single ethnicity. Now, the left will really get him for this one. He said, not because of a single individual or one single ethnicity. It's a melting pot. Yeah, that's what we always used to say, but that's politically so incorrect nowadays, right? You got the best of both, the best of the best, and that's why the United States is so great a country. So this, I didn't get to this yesterday. It was part of the card dealing with an article in the Post that suggests that there is a possibility that the United States will evacuate Afghanis who work for the United States to Guam because it wouldn't be time for them to get special immigrant visas before the 11th of September. So they may be brought here, just like the Vietnamese were brought here during Operation New Life and during the time that the Kurds were brought here as part of the Iraq War. And Senator Jose Pito Terlaje says, yeah, let's bring them. And I agree 100%. And it gave me the opportunity yesterday to just say what I would like to see. I'm not saying it should be done or it can be done or what. I'd just like to see Guam recognized as a really tough, hard-charging, can-do place. And we went eyeball to eyeball with Kim Jong-un, and he blinked first. We've been through some typhoons that even people can't imagine. You know, if you went through Typhoon Karen, that was really a typhoon. And we had 3 rough typhoons in the 90s, and we survived it all. People like my wife survived the Japanese occupation during World War II. Challenge after challenge, and people here in Guam always come out on top. Even in this case dealing with CERCLA and the Ordot Dumping Center, I was happy to see this commentary that said, you know, that what happened in the Guam case will have a dramatic effect on cases in the states and states' rights. That's exactly where we want to be. An important part of the country that doesn't take, that doesn't take no for an answer, that's not weak, and it's not whining about what some Navy captain said in 1904, like Michael Bavacqua wants us all to do. You know, Michael Bavacqua calls his troops to order, calls them to attention, ready, whine. So, yeah, bring on the Taliban. And yesterday I said, I feel like I'm only going to be able to do half the issue here because sooner or later, probably on Friday in his next column, Bavacqua will come out and say, see, it's because we're a territory that they're going to dump these people on us. Tina will say, it's because of the insular cases. All right, so much for that item on the card. Next, I've got Chief Ignacio versus Jerry Kitchen. And this is an article that ran on the 23rd. Jerry Kitchen, the Chinese restaurant located at Landmark Plaza on the corner of the ITC intersection, has reopened, not from a closure from the pandemic, but from a freak accident where a Jeep Rubicon swerved out of control and smashed into the restaurant in late February. The vehicle drove nearly 30 feet into the shop, coming to a rest at the very back of the restaurant, near the restrooms and kitchen. The incident sparked an investigation. The incident sparked an investigation by Guam police. I missed that.
Nope.
Yeah, this was Steve, remember? And here's Steve comment on the Jerry Kitchen incident. I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. That's what Steve said. He said, I've examined everything. Police officers did exactly what they should have done. And owner Jerry and his wife, Wee John Chu, have since regrouped and have reopened nearly 90 days after the bizarre accident. We opened on Monday, May 17, after being closed about 3 months, he said. We have one stall now instead of two, making it harder to hit Jerry Kitchen from Marine Corps Drive. You only got one. You only got one storefront to hit now. Before you had two, yeah. And we've changed up the menu a little bit. We're still offering Hong Kong. I'm going to give Jerry a little free advertising here, right? We're still offering the Hong Kong style dim sum, and we've added some new dishes like oxtail soup, ham hock, chopped steak, and basted Jeep, said Lee. Barbecued Jeep throat. Lee said the business was takeout only for months because of the pandemic, and we're ready to reopen when food service protocols allowed for 75% capacity. We didn't really plan on the accident. Really?
You don't say.
He didn't really plan on the accident. Yeah, we got to work. Steve, you got to have your officers work a little more closely with Jerry. So
don't tell his insurer.
Yeah. People have been asking when we will open, and when we finally were open, we were happy to see some of our regular customers. Fortunately, the lady with the red Jeep didn't come back, Jerry said. Jerry Kitchen is back in business from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 to 9 p.m. for dinner, 2 a.m. for drive-in service. Yeah, so I wonder if Steve has gone down to Jerry Kitchen for dinner since Jerry's been reopened. And tomorrow, we've got some breaking news here. An arrest has been made. So we'll go into that again tomorrow, and I'm sure that Steve Ignacio will have some sterling quotes. I just can't get over this one. You know, there was so much wrong with what happened. A Jeep going airborne, crashing into that restaurant, cop treating it as though it's a parking violation, and Chief Steve Ignacio, I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. Well, we'll see tomorrow. Okay, next on the card, we're going national here for a little while. Tulsi Gabbard calls Lori Lightfoot, Chicago mayor, to resign. Yeah. Former Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat from Hawaii, who, by the way, is, I think it was either born in Samoa or grew up in Samoa, or has a Samoan, there's a Samoan dimension there somewhere. Tulsi Gabbard blasted Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Friday and called for her resignation following the revelation that Lightfoot only grants interviews to journalists of color. Mayor Lightfoot's blatant anti-white racism is abhorrent, Gabbard wrote in a tweet. Yeah, I should have sent this over to Tina. They could have spent some time talking about this. I call upon President Biden, Kamala Harris, and other leaders of our country of all races to join me in calling for Mayor Lightfoot's resignation. Our leaders must condemn all racism, including anti-white, Gabbard said. The Tribune went so far as to cancel an interview with Lightfoot on Wednesday in protest of her decision to exclude white reporters from one-on-one interviews.
It's a good thing President Barack Obama is not a reporter.
Absolutely. As Breitbart News previously reported, Gregory Pratt, who is Latino, I wonder if he's related to Benjamin Bratt, if you watch Law and Order.
Mm-hmm.
Pratt, no, I guess not. Gregory Pratt, who is Latino, noted that he had been granted an interview under Lightfoot's racially exclusionary policy, but had used that opportunity to ask her to end that policy. When she refused, the Tribune canceled the interview. Lightfoot attempted to defend her policy Wednesday in a letter to news outlets, attacking systemic racism in the media. Another good default answer, right? Other journalists have been happy to enforce Lightfoot's new policy, including Lynn Sweet of the Chicago Sun-Times, who told CNN she was, quote, not troubled by Lightfoot's exclusion of white journalists. And I've got another article here. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot attempted to defend her racist interview policy on Wednesday, explaining why she would only give interviews to journalists of color and exclude white journalists on occasion of her 2-year anniversary in office. In a letter to news organizations and in a series of tweets, Lightfoot claimed there was racial, quote, imbalance in the news media, especially in the City Hall press corps, and that she wanted to use her position to force journalism to become more diverse. We know what that means. Our strength is our diversity, right?
Will she accept an interview from Rachel Dolezal?
Yeah, I think she would. A person of color, yeah. In her letter, reported by CBS affiliate WTTW, Lightfoot cited the county's, this is counties, not countries, cited the county's historic reckoning around systemic racism. She got elected to the mayor of Chicago, right? And I suspect that probably 10 or 15%, probably 80% of the people in Chicago are not black. But anyhow, what difference does that make, right? She cited the county's historic reckoning around systemic racism and suggested that the media in Chicago suffered from institutionalized racism. She complained that as the city's first black, female, and lesbian mayor, man, that's as high as you can. A lot
of boxes.
That's as high as you can get. It's absolutely the top. That's 3 aces.
Tipping the scales.
Absolutely. 3 aces would beat a royal flush in that game. She complained, as you were, the journalists assigned to cover her were practically all white. Practically all white.
Some of their fingers were tan.
Some of them had colored hands or colored ears, but they were practically all white. Yeah. Adding, I find this unacceptable. Jim Moylan, draft up a bill for her. CBS Chicago asked, in Chicago there's a crime crisis, an unemployment and now a worker crisis, among other issues. The 3 arguably most powerful politicians in Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, and State's Attorney Kim Foxx, are all African-American women. One is openly gay. So is this the time for a diversity lecture? Of course. If you really understand the meaning of diversity. Yeah. One more. This is from a guy named Ingram. It's not Laura Ingram. Ingram. What the hell is the world coming to? Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is a lot of things. She's a mayor. She's a Democrat. She's ultra-liberal. She's an open lesbian. She's black. She's a lawyer. She's pro-union, pro-abortion, and she's anti-cop. Covered all the bases. Lori Lightfoot is also unequivocally and undeniably a racist. How could that be? He said she's black. Wait, a black female lesbian is a racist? How can this be? The mainstream media has conditioned us to believe people who are woke are wonderful people who believe in the good in others and in virtue signaling and who want nothing but rainbow-colored unicorns who poop Neapolitan ice cream to inhabit the earth. That's the way we want it. Well, folks, that is all the stuff the mainstream media, thought police, wants you to believe about people who are woke, like BLM activists, academics, union bums, and other assorted liberals. It's all bull, ... T. I think I would refer to it as it's all bovine excrement. We have all had in believing woke people in the media are actually out for truth, justice, equality, freedom, and the American way. The reality is woke liberals and the liberal media don't believe in any of that, and they are hypocrites whenever they talk about diversity and inclusion. In reality, they embrace their own special form of racism. Case in point, Tuesday, Lori Lightweight announced that she would cease giving media interviews to white journalists, preferring rather to only grant one-on-one interviews to black and brown members of the press. Now, maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm just plain stupid, but how in the hell is that not blatant racism? Just change the names for a moment and imagine the outrage from the mainstream media if Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell had announced that he would only grant interviews to white journalists. He'd be called a racist, a hater, a Klansman, an insular case supporter. And all Republicans in the country would be grouped together and told they are bigots and part of the systemic racism in the country who owe blacks reparations for stuff most of their ancestors did not do 150 years ago. Meanwhile, some two-bit liberal black woman who looks like a character from the bar scene in the original Star Wars movie says she will only be interviewed by blacks and Hispanics. But where is the media outrage? There's none. Let's head for Churchill Downs, and then I'll finish this up, Jose.
Busy week, Mezcla Bistro in Tucumán has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Okay, so here we are wrapping up here, Tall Tales for today with Lori Lightfoot and her rule that as the mayor of Chicago, she will only give interviews to people of color. White boys, stay away. She's not going to give you an interview. And the columnist here asks, where's the media outrage? You know, this isn't happening to somebody else. It's happening to you guys, media. And there is none. Why? Because the media is complicit in the lie that is America is racist. Yeah, are they covering the Resolution 56? Probably. And that racism is systemic in all institutions in our society. America isn't racist. Here we go with the lie you've heard 1,000 times and the fact you just heard. But the media loves racism because it helps sell subscriptions increases click-through rates and adds to TV rating points, and obfuscates the issue in the real issue in legislative debates. But what does Lightfoot's statement in the media's inaction really say? It says racism is fine. It says it's perfectly acceptable to tell someone to go pound sand in the corner because I don't like it because you are white. Unfortunately, what Lightweight, the media, and all the other woke liberals don't understand is it also says you are not welcome to sit at my lunch counter if you are black, brown, Jewish, gay, transgender, handicapped, elderly, etc. The irony should be lost to no one that a black lesbian who is an outspoken supporter of every offended minority on the planet is fine, totally fine, telling white people that her government office will not deal with you because of the color of your skin, because it is a skin color that she personally deems unacceptable. That's racism. I don't believe institutional racism exists in America, but if the Lori Lightfoots of this world are allowed to conduct themselves in office in such an egregious racist manner, institutionalized racism will become a reality and will be a two-way street that will benefit no one. As Jackie Gleason's character, Sheriff Buford T. Justice, said in the movie Smokey and the Bandit, what the hell is the world coming to? I say that almost every day as I see some new atrocity breaking on our shores. This is the new reality of what the world has come to, and you can thank the media for allowing it to happen. If Lori Lightfoot were white, she would be rightly shamed into oblivion, but since she's black, female, lesbian, she checks off all sorts of boxes for the mainstream media and knows she cannot be touched. What Lightfoot said is a disgrace. What the media has done not done in response is shameful. I couldn't agree more. And you know, once again, I will trot out my own politically incorrect of race. I think that, back when Plessy was decided, one of the justices, what was his name? It'll come to me in a second. One of the justices dissented and said the Constitution contemplates a colorblind country. Yeah. And that's my idea, that the country should be colorblind. We shouldn't decide questions on what a person's race is or his ethnicity or whatever. People should be dealt with based on their own particular merit, a meritocracy. And the way I was raised that we don't judge people based on stereotypes. Say, well, I'm going to invent a term here. I'm going to say that a race different from the ones that we're used to would be green. Okay, there are no green people, so I'm not going to identify anybody, right? So the way I was raised was, we treat everybody the same. We treat green people and everybody else the same. We don't treat them in accordance with some stereotype that may have been floating around. And because we don't do that, we are not prejudiced. In other words, we don't prejudge people based upon the fact that they're green. And because we're not prejudiced, we don't discriminate against them. We don't say, well, you're different, so I'm not going to treat you the same way as everybody else. That to me is not being racist. But everything that I just said would be branded as extremely racist by the critical race theory folks. This idea of colorblind, that's just white oppression, telling people to forget that they're the oppressed because everybody is colorblind when they're not. So that's where I'm coming from, and the whole critical race theory is exactly the opposite. Everything, according to those who engage in critical race theory, is governed by race. Nothing else. No matter what it is, it always comes down to race. And that's where the systemic part comes in. So until the oppressors are overthrown, the oppressed will never get an even break in this systemic system. That's Black Lives Matter, that's Antifa, that's the race hustlers, it's all of what's going on. It's underlying the whole George Floyd summer of riots, etc. And we got it here. We've got our separatists who want you to zero in on what somebody said in 1904 that you find offensive in accord with today's standards and pretend that it just happened yesterday and that it's happening all the time. And because of that, we have to do something that really isn't in our interest. And that's where the separatists come from. They're not Lori Lightfoot. They're a little bit more clever about it. But it comes down to the same thing. It's all about race. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow. And remember, Amata Coleman Radowagon tomorrow at 4:30. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
What happened to a government probe of the coronavirus? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A State Department investigation into whether the virus leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China, ended with the transfer of power from the Trump to the Biden administration. According to a State Department source who has spoken to Fox News, this as the current administration pushes for an international probe into the genesis of the virus.
The Biden administration's effort to investigate the origins of the pandemic is primarily focused on rallying pressure and support for the WHO's investigation to become more transparent and fulsome. The very same WHO, by the way, which has been very sharply criticized for deflecting any blame toward China and whose own investigation has come under scrutiny for being grossly insufficient.
Fox's Kevin Corke, the theory that the pandemic began when the virus leaked from a Chinese virology lab has been widely disputed, partly because of Chinese pressure, but it's now gaining support. In the U.S. yesterday, an additional 618 deaths were blamed on the virus. The Senate will take a floor vote, likely yet this week, on creating a special commission to examine January's riot at the Capitol building.
This commission is needed to get the truth of how it happened.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, but Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell says the truth is not the Democrats' primary motivation.
I think this is a purely political exercise that adds nothing to the sum total of information.
The legislation has already passed in the House. A firefighting helicopter with a crew of 4 has crashed during a training mission in Central Florida.
Of those 4 people who were on board, now it is confirmed that 1 person is dead. No survivors found so far, and the FAA says that this helicopter is a total loss.
Reporter Samantha Sosa of Fox 35 in Orlando says the helicopter broke in 2 after getting into a tailspin. Federal safety investigators will look for the cause. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are the most important issues facing Americans today? Every Monday, join me, Brett Baer, Chief Political Anchor and Executive Editor of Special Report, and my rotating all-star panel